So, the game tells us Fort Haight was just another spot to clear out, a quick pit stop on your road to becoming Elden Lord, right? Help out a fancy noble, grab a piece of a medallion, and you're done. But that's a lie. If you stop and look around, the evidence tells a completely different story. This wasn't a simple battle, it was an execution, a murder designed to be ignored by a busy player. Today, we're putting on our detective hats to uncover what really happened. We'll analyze the crime scene, check the forensic evidence, understand the systemic motives, and finally, deliver a verdict. Forget the enemies. The first thing you should see at Fort Haight isn't a battle, it's a slaughter. When we arrive, Godric's soldiers are defending the walls from a handful of demi-humans and us. Just outside, a lingering spirit gives us our first piece of testimony. The demi-humans wax wroth, now their mother's been taken. They aren't invaders, they're here for revenge. Push inside, and the signs of a desperate, last-stand defense are everywhere. Hastily built barricades and explosive barrels. But the biggest clue is sprawled in the main courtyard, easy to mistake for simple set dressing. It's the body. A huge armored figure, completely different from any other enemy. This is the corpse of a demi-human queen. This is the mother the ghost was talking about. She wasn't killed in some random skirmish. She was executed inside the fort. This wasn't a casualty of war. This was the assassination of a political figure. Godric's men weren't defending a fort. They were guarding a tomb they had just filled. The murder weapon tells a story, and this one screams. At the top of the fort, we find the Knight Commander, but the real clue isn't his armor. It's the skill he uses and drops, the ash of war, bloody slash. The description is our core piece of forensic evidence, blood oath skill granted by the Lord of Blood. From a low stance, coat the blade in your own blood to unleash a rending blood slash in a wide arc. This isn't standard military training. It's a blood ritual that literally costs the user their own health to perform. Each use is a small sacrifice to something that's waiting to collect. The ghost description of the knight as bedeviled by blood wasn't a metaphor, it was a literal diagnosis. This knight was a fanatic, drawing power from Mohg, the Lord of Blood. Mohg serves an outer god, the formless mother, who craves wounds and communicates through blood flame. The blood roses growing all over the fort aren't just decoration. They're environmental evidence of this blood worship. Their item description is even more direct. Particularly beloved by those who serve the Lord of Blood. Glory to his inevitable reign. The knight didn't just kill the queen. From this, we can infer he ritually executed her with dark magic. This wasn't a soldier following orders. This was a zealot performing a sacrament. The execution at Fort Haight wasn't a one-off tragedy. It was the Golden Order system working exactly as intended. The knight didn't need a direct order from Godric. The ideology was the kill order. To understand this, we have to look at the Order's rigid hierarchy of life. Beings like demi-humans are seen as lesser, somewhere just above beasts, but it wasn't always this way. The demi-human queen staff confirms there was a time of formal acknowledgement. Its description reads, glintstone staff styled as a scepter, a gift once given to the demi-humans to foster peace. There was a relationship, there was a gesture of peace. The Golden Order saw the demi-humans, recognized their society, and then chose to revoke that recognition. This wasn't just simple prejudice, it was a cold, political decision to start treating them like obstacles. That choice is far more damning than initial exclusion, and this is where the player becomes an instrument of that system. We are guided to this fort by grace, the light of the Order itself. We weren't sent to investigate a crime or to mediate a conflict. The game's objective is clear. Clear the location, kill the knight, and take the reward. The system the Golden Order built within the Lord is simply run on the player. You arrive, you neutralize the problem, and you move on. We aren't being tricked into a cover-up. We are willingly executing a function of the system. The player wasn't manipulated, the player was useful. So who's the real villain? The man with the bloody sword, or the man who pointed him toward his victim and then walked away? This brings us back to Kenneth Haight, The centerpiece of the case comes down to two witnesses describing the exact same night. The first is Kenneth, who calls the night a fool and plumb mad to boot, simply obsessed with blood, mad. This word choice is critical. Mad implies an internal failure, a random break from sanity, a tragedy with no one to blame. Our second witness is the ghost who died right here, still describing the event. Its word is different. The night, bedeviled by blood. Bedeviled. This implies an external force, a possession, something that was invited in. Kenneth chooses the diagnosis that requires the least accountability. The ghost picks the word that points to a cause. And as we established with the evidence, the bloody slash, the blood roses, the link to the Lord of Blood, the ghost was right. This was a ritualistic execution. Kenneth's diagnosis isn't a mistake. It's a choice to frame a political murder as an act of random insanity. Then, after we've done his dirty work, he says he intends to honor his alliance with the Demi-Humans.
Time for me to head to the fort. I've much to do. First, I'll have to re-establish communication with the Demi-Humans. What's that look? You don't believe me? Well, under the Erd Tree, commingling with the Demi-Humans is made possible. Even the vulgar shall not be left behind, under the rule of true order.
Let's pull that apart. Made possible. Not welcomed, not owed, but made possible by the Erd Tree's authority. And the vulgar? That is what he calls his supposed allies, whose queen just died in his fort while he was conveniently absent. This isn't the language of an ally. It's the condescending policy speech of a bureaucrat. So what is the verdict? Was he a coward who abandoned his post? Was he complicit in secretly orchestrating the queen's removal? Or, the third option, did he simply not care? A man who calls his dead allies' killer mad rather than evil, who calls his former partners vulgar while pretending to be their advocate, who returns to a fort full of bodies and immediately starts worrying about finding a true and stalwart lord of the proper lineage. That isn't cowardice, and it isn't conspiracy. It's a man whose principles had a ceiling, and the Demi-Humans were always living below it. Kenneth Haight didn't order a liberation. He hired a janitor to dispose of the body.